Imagine the open road stretching out before you. You're on a motorcycle, the engine a steady hum beneath you, the wind a constant presence. It's more than just a ride, it's that feeling of absolute, unburdened freedom as the world blurs past. But what if that seemingly simple journey, that open road, was actually a vehicle for something far, far deeper? A profound, almost spiritual quest for understanding that could fundamentally change how you perceive everything around you, from a sputtering engine to the very fabric of reality and the laws of physics themselves. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take your sources, your articles, your research, your notes, and distill them into essential insights, helping you navigate complex ideas with clarity and, hopefully, a fresh perspective. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into an extraordinary book that really defies easy categorization. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's part cross-country travelogue, part deeply personal memoir, and part profound philosophical treatise.
That's right. And this isn't merely a book about the mechanics of motorcycles, though, there's plenty of practical wisdom to be found there. At its heart, it's an exploration of how we perceive reality, the elusive nature of what we call quality, and the often hidden, sometimes troubling forces that shape our lives and our society. Our sources for today's deep dive are extensive excerpts directly from the text itself, offering us a direct window into the narrator's remarkable cross-country journey and his increasingly profound and, yeah, at times unsettling philosophical insights.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack the central tension that the narrator grapples with throughout the book. It's the seemingly irreconcilable gap between technology and the human spirit, between the cold, hard logic of reason and the intuitive feeling of experience. We'll explore how this deep dive suggests a pretty radical path to bridge that very gap, a way of finding quality not just in grand concepts, but in the most unexpected, everyday places.
And perhaps most compellingly, we'll delve into how the narrator's own intense personal journey, including a harrowing struggle with his past self, whom he refers to as Phaedrus, becomes a living, breathing demonstration of these profound philosophical challenges. It's a journey not just across states, but through the intricate, often turbulent landscape of the human mind. Okay, let's unpack this fascinating narrative and its powerful ideas.
The open road and its discontents, a journey of contrasts.
Let's begin our journey on the road itself, because the setting is far more than just a backdrop, isn't it? Picture this cross-country motorcycle trip. It's not just the narrator and his young son Chris riding together, but also their close friends, John and Sylvia Sutherland, who often ride ahead of them. And this isn't your typical rush-to-get-there kind of vacation. It's a deliberate, almost meditative journey. They prefer secondary roads, with paved county roads being the absolute best, state highways next, and freeways. Well, those are deemed the worst possible way to travel. Their goal isn't fast time, it's good time. The entire emphasis is on the experience itself. Banking into turns on twisting, hilly roads, soaking in the scenery, enjoying the sparse traffic. It's about being truly in the journey, not just getting through it as quickly as possible.
Exactly. And you really see that difference in their entire approach to life, not just travel. They navigate mostly by dead reckoning, relying on a simple compass and a map mounted right there on the gas tank. They're unconcerned with rushing, often just keeping track of miles from the last junction and knowing what landmarks to look for. This minimalist approach gives them a sense of having America all to ourselves, a quiet communion with the landscape. And this stands in stark contrast to the scene the narrator vividly describes when they occasionally cross a federal highway, particularly on a busy holiday weekend like Labor Day or Memorial Day. There, you see cars strung bumper to the horizon, filled with scowling faces and kids crying in the back seat. The narrator observes that these people scowl and appear to be in a hurry, and there isn't a way to tell them what they're truly missing. It's not just a difference in preferred travel rights, it's a fundamental philosophical difference in how they approach life itself, a desire to get through something versus a desire to truly experience it, to be present.
And this philosophical difference, this fundamental divergence in how people approach the world, it extends far beyond the open road. It becomes glaringly apparent in their relationship with their machines, with the motorcycles themselves. While the narrator finds profound satisfaction, intellectual engagement, and even a kind of spiritual connection in the seemingly mundane act of motorcycle maintenance, his companions, John and Sylvia, they exhibit an intense, almost visceral aversion to it. I mean, John's eyes apparently go completely glassy at the mere mention of mechanical work, and Sylvia just dismisses it as garbage whenever she's not, feeling particularly thoughtful. The narrator notes they actively do not want to understand it, and he observes that this difference is so profound, it appears to run way, way deep. What is it about this specific aversion that so fascinates the narrator?
Well, it's not just a casual distaste, is it? It's a deep-seated resistance. We see this illustrated in that really poignant anecdote where John struggles to start his bike. He's unable to realize he simply needs to adjust the choke. The narrator describes John being super polite to Sylvia while he pumped away, meaning he was furious, and Sylvia's just giving this exasperated, ye gods look, and John's immediate reaction is one of paranoia and external blame. They just had this one motorcycle, see, this lemon, and they didn't know what to do with it, and then at the last moment they saw me coming with $1,800 in my pocket. He sees the motorcycle as this adversarial entity, a lemon, rather than a system he can understand, diagnose, and ultimately fix. He simply doesn't want to engage with it beyond its surface function. It's almost as if acknowledging the need for maintenance is admitting to some kind of personal failure or submitting to something deeply unpleasant.
And that's exactly it, right? This isn't just about a broken bike or a preference for someone else to fix things. It's a window into a much deeper resistance, a profound disconnect that puzzled the narrator for a long time. It's almost a philosophical objection to the very idea of engaging with the inner workings of machines.
Yeah, and the narrator's light bulb moment, his truly profound realization, arrives when he connects John and Sylvia's disdain for motorcycle maintenance to Sylvia's suppressed anger at a seemingly trivial dripping faucet back in her home. He observes her trying to talk over the persistent dripping and the noise of the kids, eventually losing her temper at the children instead of the actual source of the irritation. He realizes that her anger wouldn't have been nearly as great if the faucet hadn't been dripping. What strikes him really hard is that she was deliberately not blaming the faucet. She wasn't ignoring it at all. She was actively suppressing anger at that faucet, and that goddamn dripping faucet was just about killing her. But for some reason, she couldn't admit its importance, couldn't acknowledge that this mechanical problem was a source of her frustration. It was like an intellectual blind spot.
So, what does this all mean when you pull back the curtain? The narrator realizes their aversion isn't just to maintenance or a specific broken item. It's much, much larger. It's all of technology they can't take. He notes that their art, their drawings, paintings, and photographs have no technological thing in them. It's a complete artistic exclusion of the mechanical world, an intentional avoidance of anything that smacks of engineering or complex systems. It's like a deliberate walling off.
Exactly. He identifies this collective aversion as a manifestation of kind of force that gives rise to technology. Something undefined, but inhuman, mechanical, lifeless, a blind monster, a death force. It's something they are running from but know they can never escape because technology is so deeply interwoven with modern life, isn't it? This profound aversion manifests as a hostile feeling towards anything mechanical, valves and shafts and wrenches, anything associated with what they perceive as that dehumanized world. He posits that this isn't just an individual quirk. It manifests in society as a larger anti-technological mass movement, which, while still restrained by a thin web of logic that points out that without the factories there are no jobs or standard of living, is ultimately driven by human forces stronger than logic. This really raises an important question for all of us, I think. Do you ever feel overwhelmed or even repulsed by the complexities of modern technology, wishing you could escape the system or avoid dealing with its intricate, often frustrating details? It's a surprisingly common feeling, and the narrator argues it's a symptom of a much deeper cultural split.
The two worlds, classical and romantic understanding.
Okay, so to truly understand this death force or inhuman aspect that so repulses people like John and Sylvia, the narrator delves into a concept from his past self, Phaedrus. It's this fundamental dichotomy of classical understanding and romantic understanding.
Yeah.
This is where the core philosophical framework of the book really begins to take shape, providing a lens through which to view not just technology, but, well, all of human experience.
Precisely. A classical understanding sees the world primarily as underlying form itself. Think of an engineer looking at an intricate blueprint of an engine. It's about dissecting things into pieces, understanding their components, the relationships, precise measurements, and requiring rigorous proof for everything. It's analytical, systematic, logical. This highly structured, often abstract approach, however, is seen by those with a romantic understanding as dull, awkward, and ugly, oppressive, heavy, endlessly gray, the death force. From their perspective, it drains the life, the beauty, the spontaneity out of things. It's like, I don't know, reducing a beautiful song to just a series of mathematical equations or something.
Yeah, exactly. And conversely, a romantic understanding sees it primarily in terms of immediate appearance. They focus on what delights the senses, the aesthetic, the immediate, often emotional experience. If you were to show a romantic the same engine blueprint, they'd likely find no appeal because the reality he sees is its surface. Dull, complex lists of names, lines, and numbers. Nothing interesting. They want to experience the wind in their hair on the motorcycle, not the details of the combustion cycle. And from a classical perspective, romantics are often perceived as frivolous, irrational, erratic, untrustworthy, interested primarily in pleasure seeking, shallow, of no substance. They're seen as a real drag on society, unable to engage with the necessary complexities of the world. So you have these two entirely different, often mutually exclusive ways of perceiving and valuing reality.
And this distinction isn't just academic. It's, as the narrator calls it, the source of the trouble that manifests everywhere, from personal relationships to societal divides. People tend to think and feel exclusively in one mode or the other. And in doing so, they misunderstand and underestimate what the other mode is all about, often seeing the other as fundamentally flawed or even malicious. The profound issue is that in their minds, there's no real reconciliation of these truths or modes, no perceived point where these distinct visions of reality can be unified. They exist as separate, often antagonistic realms.
Right. This then leads to a huge split that he feels has only intensified in recent times between a classic culture and a romantic counterculture, two worlds growingly alienated and hateful toward each other. The narrator uses that powerful metaphor of a house divided against itself, a house where no one truly wants this division despite what the antagonist in the other dimension might think. It's a societal fracture where entire groups of people operate from fundamentally different assumptions about what is real and valuable. Think about how often we see this play out. The engineer versus the artist, the scientist versus the mystic, efficiency versus experience. It's everywhere.
It really is. And to illustrate this further, consider the commercial mechanics the narrator encounters. They live with technology, they interact with it daily, but in their own way, they also avoid truly engaging with it on a deeper level. They wrench twiddle while listening to the radio, exhibiting this disconnected, almost bored attitude that achieves the same uninvolved approach as John and Sylvia, but from within the technological realm. They are described as spectators, lacking identification with the job or saying, "I am a mechanic." They're simply performing a function, a series of prescribed steps. At 5 p.m., their 8 hours are done and they cut it off, not having another thought about their work. In fact, he says they are already trying not to have any thoughts about their work on the job. This shows that the problem isn't just about rejecting technology from the outside. It's about how one engages with it, whether it's with genuine understanding and connection or simply as a detached routine and ultimately unfulfilling activity. It's a form of internal alienation, even while physically present.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This division isn't just an abstract philosophical concept. Have you ever felt this division in your own life or observed it playing out in society? That frustration between those who prioritize efficiency and analytical precision and those who prioritize experience, emotion, and aesthetic appeal. It's a tension that plays out in so many arenas, from boardroom meetings to family discussions, from education to how we choose to spend our leisure time. It's a fundamental friction.
The ghost of rationality Phaedrus' unraveling.
So the narrator then reveals a crucial and frankly unsettling truth about his past self. Phaedrus spent his entire life pursuing a ghost, and this ghost is, surprisingly, rationality itself, which Phaedrus comes to see as fundamentally incoherence and meaninglessness. It's a relentless, almost maddening questioning of the ultimate purpose of life beyond mere survival. The ghost, as he puts it, declares that great minds struggle to cure diseases so that people may live longer, but only madmen ask why. One lives longer in order that he may live longer. There is no other purpose. This is the core of Phaedrus's intellectual crisis, a profound existential emptiness he found at the heart of pure reason. If reason's ultimate goal is just more reason, well, what's the point?
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. And this relentless internal quest began deep within the halls of academia, where Phaedrus had pursued what he saw as the highest echelon of the entire hierarchy of knowledge, philosophy. He had once thought of science as the whole world of knowledge, but he came to realize it was merely a branch, far narrower than the profound questions he was asking. He discovered that the questions he had asked about infinite hypotheses weren't really of interest to science because they weren't scientific questions. His inquiries were at a higher level than science goes, questioning the very foundations and assumptions that science operates upon. He was digging deeper than anyone around him seemed willing to.
Absolutely. Phaedrus's deep dive into philosophy involved grappling with thinkers like David Hume and Immanuel Kant, giants who reshaped Western thought. Hume's radical idea was that if all knowledge comes from our senses, if we can only know what we experience, then concepts like nature and nature's laws are ultimately creations of our own imagination. This is because there's no direct sensory data for substance or causation itself. We don't see cause, we just see one event repeatedly following another. These abstract concepts are just something we imagine when one thing repeatedly follows another. Hume argued that if one accepts that all knowledge comes through senses, then both nature and its laws have no real existence in the world we observe. It's radical stuff. To grasp Hume's radicalism, imagine challenging the very idea of cause and effect itself. He was saying, just because the sun rises every day after the earth spins doesn't mean the spin causes the rise. We just get used to seeing them together and our minds create the link. For Phaedrus, this kind of thinking, if taken to its extreme, could undermine the very foundations of rational thought and scientific law, creating a truly unsettling philosophical void.
Right. And this philosophical concept is echoed powerfully in that ghost story the narrator tells Chris one night, bringing this abstract idea into sharp, relatable focus. He explains that laws of science are like ghosts because they contain no matter and have no energy either, and therefore, according to the laws of science, do not exist except in people's minds. End quote. No. He challenges John's common sense, predicting that if one thinks about it long enough, the only logical conclusion is that the law of gravity and gravity itself did not exist before Isaac Newton. It's a direct, tangible echo of Hume's profound skepticism, forcing you, the reader, to question what you take for granted as objective reality.
Exactly. Now, Kant, who was deeply disturbed by Hume's conclusions, responded by suggesting that a priori concepts, inherent pre-existing structures in our minds, like continuity, space, time, and causation screen, and organize the raw sensory data we receive. What we call reality is therefore a continuous synthesis of these innate mental concepts and the ever-changing sensory input. It's like our brain comes with certain pre-installed apps or mental filters, things like time, space, and the idea of cause and effect. So when you look at that motorcycle, your brain isn't just seeing raw data, it's actively using those pre-installed apps to build the motorcycle in your mind. It's a constant active process. Just as Copernicus offered an alternative a priori concept of the world, shifting from an Earth-centered to a sun-centered model that fit existing data but radically changed our understanding of our place in the universe, Phaedrus sought his own Copernican inversion. So just like Copernicus wasn't trying to just fix the old Earth-centered model, he flipped our entire understanding of the cosmos. Phaedrus wasn't just trying to fix the classical romantic divide, he was trying to flip our entire understanding of reality. He believed that if we could shift our core perspective, our a priori concepts, we could see that these two seemingly opposing ways of seeing the world were actually two sides of the same coin, unified by something deeper, quality.
Okay, but here's where the personal toll of this intense intellectual pursuit becomes really clear. Despite the initial thrill of Kant's metaphysics, it eventually felt like more of the prison again, to Phaedrus. He found Kant's ideas about the beautiful to be ugly, and this ugliness seemed woven into the very fabric of reason itself, inescapable in the university and the textbooks and even within himself. He observed that all the philosophers he was reading, and even the whole university itself, smelled of the same ugliness. It felt like reason itself that was ugly, and there seemed no way to get free. He felt trapped, unable to escape the very structure of thought that he believed was flawed.
And this relentless, almost obsessive pursuit of truth, this fundamental challenging of every single assumption, ultimately led to Phaedrus's insanity. He reached a state where he had no possible way of understanding what was before him. The world, as perceived through his unraveling rationality, just became incomprehensible. Yet, paradoxically, in that state, he believed he had solved a huge riddle of the universe, cut a Gordian knot of dualistic thought with one word: quality. His megalomania, the conviction that he had found a profound, world-shaking truth, that he understood something no one else could, was a symptom of this conviction, leading him to live in a solitary universe of discourse where no one understood him and he couldn't connect with the world around him. It was the ultimate tragic cost of his intellectual quest.
Unifying force, the discovery of quality.
But out of this intellectual and deeply personal crisis, Phaedrus found himself at a crossroads. He was a teacher, right? He needed to impart something meaningful to his students, something that wasn't just rote memorization or dry facts. And so he posed a seemingly simple yet revolutionary question to his students. What is quality in thought and statement?
Right. And when his students, accustomed to clear definitions and objective criteria, struggled to define it, he famously wrote on the blackboard, "But even though quality cannot be defined, you know what quality is." He then proceeded to demonstrate this undeniable, intuitive understanding. He had them choose between two student compositions, one a rambling, disconnected thing, the other a magnificent piece. The overwhelming majority of his students, without hesitation or shared definition, identified the second as having quality. He declared, whatever it is that caused the overwhelming majority to raise their hands for the second one is what I mean by quality, so you know what it is.
Oh,
Apparently, there was this long, reflective silence in the classroom as the students absorbed this, a silent aha moment that transcended their usual intellectual frameworks.
yeah, and this approach was, as he himself knew, intellectually outrageous. He wasn't teaching in the traditional sense. He was, as he put it, indoctrinating them, pointing them towards something indefinable yet undeniably real. But the thing is, it worked. By refusing to define quality, he bypassed the limitations of traditional dualistic reason, creating a positive goal that filled the vacuum left by the absence of grades. Students, astonished by this new internal compass, came to his office saying things like, I used to just hate English, now I spend more time on it than anything else. It gave them a new passion for their work, an internal motivation he had sought for years. It transformed their entire approach to learning.
It really did. Phaedrus realized quality was what he called a cleavage term. You take your analytic knife, put the point directly on the term quality, and just tap. And the whole world splits, cleaves right in two, hip and square, classic and romantic, technological and humanistic. It was the dividing line, the ultimate differentiator. This split, however, was also the path to unification. By identifying the root cause of the division, he saw how what had previously seemed irreconcilable, the objective and subjective, the rational and the intuitive, could actually be understood as different aspects of a single underlying reality. Quality wasn't just a category, it was the fundamental force that created those categories.
And here's where it gets truly profound, maybe even a bit mystical, because Phaedrus discovered that this undefinable quality was strikingly akin to the Tao in ancient Eastern philosophy, particularly from the 2,400-year-old Tao Te Ching of Lao Tzu. He found that what he had been talking about all the time as quality was right there, explicitly described in this ancient text. He was, in a sense, rediscovering an ancient truth through his own rigorous Western philosophical journey.
Yeah, he had hand-copied the Tao Te Ching years before, and now, on impulse, went back to it, reading and interpreting it with this new revolutionary lens. Lines from the text resonated profoundly, almost as if they were written specifically for his discovery. The quality that can be defined is not the absolute quality. The names that can be given it are not absolute names. It is the origin of heaven and earth. And then another passage that perfectly captured his breakthrough. Romantic quality and classic quality together may be called the mystic. Reaching from mystery into deeper mystery, it is the gate to the secret of all life. Think about the sheer weight of that realization. If quality is the generating force of everything, it dissolves the artificial boundaries we often put between art and science, between the sacred and the mundane. It suggests that a perfectly tuned engine and a perfectly crafted poem are expressions of the same underlying truth. Quality became for him all-pervading and inexhaustible, the great central generating force of all religions, all knowledge, everything. This immense realization, this breaking of the code of the universe, however, was so overwhelming, so all-encompassing, that it ultimately pushed Phaedrus over the edge. It led to an avalanche of thought and awareness out of control, ultimately resulting in his mental breakdown. It was a truth too vast for his singular mind to contain at that time.
Wow. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might understanding something that is known and profoundly felt, but utterly undefinable, change your approach to learning, to solving problems, or even to creating something new? It forces a different kind of engagement, one that transcends rigid categories and taps into a deeper intuitive understanding.
The art of living gumption and overcoming traps.
But this journey isn't just about abstract philosophy, right? It's deeply rooted in the practical, tangible act of motorcycle maintenance. The narrator argues that this work, far from being just grunt labor, is almost purely a process of reason, a miniature study of the art of rationality itself. It's not just elbow grease, it's intense mental exertion requiring precision and deduction.
That's a key point. He emphasizes that the physical labor involved is actually the smallest and easiest part of what a mechanic does. By far, the greatest part of his work is careful observation and precise thinking. Mechanics, in this sense, are constantly looking at underlying form, the unseen structures and principles that govern the machine. They are continually expanding their hierarchy of knowledge as they diagnose and solve problems, testing hypotheses, making deductions, and refining their understanding of how things work. It's a dynamic intellectual process, not just following a set of instructions.
Yeah, we see this clearly in the chain adjustment example. When the chain slackens, the narrator immediately diagnoses the stripped internal threading in the frame as the underlying problem, a nuanced issue that John wouldn't know where to start with. For John, the chain slack is just a surface problem, the chain is loose. But for the narrator, that surface symptom leads him to delve into the underlying mechanical structure, to apply reason and deep knowledge of the system. This seemingly simple repair becomes a powerful metaphor for larger philosophical inquiries, for how one engages with reality. It's a microcosm of the very process of rationality, where symptoms lead to diagnoses of underlying forms, which then lead to solutions.
Exactly. And building on this practical engagement, the narrator introduces the powerful concept of gumption, which he says is an old Scottish word. He explains it means being filled with enthusiasmos, which literally translates to filled with theos or God, or, in this context, quality. It's an inner wellspring of drive, enthusiasm, and a profound sense of intrinsic motivation. It's not forced. It flows naturally from a state of right engagement with the world, with quality.
Right. A person filled with gumption doesn't sit around dissipating and stewing about things. They're not stuck in inertia or frustration. Instead, he's at the front of the train of his own awareness, watching to see what's up the track and meeting it when it comes. It's nothing exotic, he clarifies. It's the gumption filling process that occurs when one is quiet long enough to see and hear and feel the real universe. Not just their own stale opinions or preconceptions about it. It's about being fully present, engaged, and open to what the task or life itself is presenting.
But of course, life and work are full of challenges that can drain this vital gumption. The narrator identifies various gumption traps that drain off gumption, destroy enthusiasm, and can be both internal within your own mind and external, the circumstances around you. He describes them vividly, offering not just identification, but profound insights into how to navigate them. It's really practical wisdom. First, there's stuckness. This is when a problem seems insurmountable, like that stripped screw on a side cover that just won't budge. Ironically, he argues this is not the worst, but the best possible situation. He says it's the psychic predecessor of all real understanding. When your logical mind hits a wall, the fear of stuckness is actually what keeps you stuck. Instead, he likens it to what Zen Buddhists seek to induce through koans and meditation. Those impossible riddles designed to exhaust your logical mind until you enter a state of beginner's mind, empty and receptive. When you're truly stuck, he says, you're forced to reevaluate the importance of the problem. That single, seemingly unimportant screw becomes worth exactly the selling price of the whole motorcycle, because the motorcycle is valueless until it's fixed. This forced reevaluation is where real learning often begins, pushing you to expand your knowledge. It's an invitation to pause, breathe, and genuinely observe.
That's such a counterintuitive but powerful idea. Okay, what's next?
Then there's value rigidity. This is being unable to see new facts because old opinions are too strong, or because you prioritize something minor over a major solution. He gives that allegorical example of a monkey in a trap, unwilling to let go of the handful of rice that keeps it caught, valuing the rice over its freedom. This is where your preconceived notions or attachments blind you to new information. The solutions he offers are simple, but profound. Slow down deliberately, stare at the coconut for a while, meaning give the problem unhurried, non-judgmental attention, and understand this fact not so much in terms of his big problem as for its own sake. It's about letting go of preconceptions and approaching a problem with an open mind, seeing the facts as they are, not as you want them to be.
Makes sense. Letting go of what you think you know.
Precisely. Next is ego. If you had a high evaluation of yourself, then your ability to recognize new facts is weakened. Ego, he argues, isolates you from the quality reality. If false information or a flawed approach makes you look good, you're likely to believe it, reinforcing your own delusion. Mechanics, he observes, tend to be modest and quiet people precisely because the nature of the work forces them to confront their mistakes directly. There's no way to bullshit your way into looking good on a mechanical repair job, he says, except with someone who knows even less than you. The machine simply doesn't care about your ego. It only responds to reality. This constant feedback loop of immediate consequences fosters humility.
A humbling profession, then. And what about boredom?
Yes, boredom. This is the opposite of anxiety and commonly goes with ego problems. It signifies you're off the quality track, have lost your beginner's mind, and your engagement with the task has waned. Your gumption supply is low, and before any further work is done, it must be replenished. Boredom often means you've lost connection with the inherent quality of the task at hand, reducing it to a dull, repetitive chore. The solution isn't to force yourself, but to recognize the lack of gumption and find a way to re-engage, perhaps by stepping away or changing your perspective.
Okay, so those are the internal traps. What about external ones?
Right, beyond these internal traps, there are external traps. Things like bad tools, a cold garage, out-of-sequence reassembly, where you put parts back in the wrong order and inevitably create new problems, or the incredibly frustrating intermittent failures, when a problem appears, then disappears, just as you try to fix it, only to return later. The solutions involve methodical preparation, like laying out parts on newspapers in sequence before disassembly. Taking long breaks when frustration sets in can also reset your mind. And for intermittent problems, he advises meticulously correlating symptoms rather than just getting frustrated. No matter how tedious a fishing expedition for an intermittent problem gets, he argues, it's never as tedious as taking the machine to a commercial mechanic 5 times for the same recurring issue. These external traps often reveal underlying internal traps, forcing you to develop discipline and patience.
It's a fascinating psychological blueprint, isn't it? This isn't just about fixing a motorcycle. It's a profound blueprint for approaching any challenge in life, whether it's a complex work project, a personal issue, or even a creative endeavor. As the narrator says, it's the way you live that predisposes you to avoid the traps and see the right facts. It's about cultivating a certain mindset, a way of being in the world that fosters resilience and genuine insight.
Absolutely. And that mindset culminates in what he calls a mechanic's feel. This implies not only an intellectual understanding for the elasticity of metal, knowing the precise difference between finger-tight, snug, and tight without stripping threads, but also for its softness, its precision, and its inherent properties. It's a kinesthetic and intuitive understanding that comes from deep embodied engagement with the material, a direct contact with basic reality, quality. It's an unspoken dialogue between the craftsman and the material.
And connecting this to a larger principle, the narrator emphatically states, peace of mind isn't at all superficial to technical work, it's the whole thing. It's the prerequisite for a perception of that quality which is beyond romantic quality and classic quality, and which unites the two. This peace of mind isn't dependent on external circumstances. It's an inner quietness that is achieved through unselfconsciousness, a letting go of ego, and leads to a kind of harmony with the work in which there's no leader and no follower. The material and the craftsman's thoughts change together until his mind is at rest at the exact instant the material is right. It's a state of flow, of complete integration with the task.
It's an ideal state, truly. How often do you find yourself rushing through a task, missing those quiet moments, that calm, that deep engagement that could lead to genuine insight or higher quality outcome? The book pushes us to consider that true mastery, whether mechanics or in life, comes not just from knowledge, but from this cultivation of an inner state, this profound peace of mind. Society, education, and the broader implications of quality. So Phaedrus, in his relentless pursuit of quality, eventually applied his insights to the very institution that had both nurtured and, well, tormented him, the university. He argued for a radical view of what the real university is. It's not a material object, he contended, not just buildings that can be defended by police, but an invisible church of reason dedicated to truth in its ever-changing forms, revealed by the ongoing process of rationality. It's an ideal, a sacred pursuit of knowledge, rather than just a physical place.
And his most controversial and deeply challenging proposal was the abolition of the degree and grading system. He believed that the system of carrot and whip grading fostered a slave mentality in students, compelling them to learn for external rewards rather than internal motivation. He vividly recalls a student's candid comment that really laid bare the system's flaw. Of course, you can't eliminate the degree and grading system. After all, that's what we're here for. This highlighted the stark reality that for many students, they were there for the credential, the piece of paper, not the true education or the love of learning itself. The system itself was creating a fundamental disconnect from quality.
Right. Phaedrus believed that eliminating grades would fundamentally transform these mules, students motivated purely by grades, into free men, knowledge-motivated individuals who learn from internal pushing. Such a student, he hypothesized, would branch out into other theoretical areas that weren't directly related to machines but had become a part of a newer, larger goal. Their learning would be driven by genuine curiosity, by an internal sense of quality, not by external requirements or fear of failure. They would become self-directed learners, pursuing knowledge wherever their inherent interest led them.
And he put this to the test in his own classroom, and the results were apparently transformative. He simply outweighted students who didn't do assignments without grades. He didn't punish them. He simply let the natural consequences of disengagement set in. Over time, many came to him, astonished by their own transformation, saying things like, I used to just hate English. Now I spend more time on it than anything else. They discovered an intrinsic motivation for learning when the external pressure of grades was removed, confirming his belief that true learning stems from an inner desire for quality. It was a profound demonstration of how external systems can stifle and how removing those systems can unleash authentic engagement. The narrator then contends that the real ugliness of modern technology doesn't lie in the objects themselves, a car or a refrigerator, nor necessarily in the people who produce or use them. Instead, the real ugliness lies in the relationship between the people who produce the technology and the things they produce, and consequently, a similar relationship between the people who use the technology and the things they use. It's a disassociation, a fundamental lack of connection.
Okay, can you elaborate on that? What does that lack of connection look like?
Well, he elaborates on this crucial point. At the moment of pure quality perception, there is no subject and there is no object. There is only a sense of quality. This identity between the perceiver and the perceived, the maker and the made, is the basis of craftsmanship. When a craftsman creates something, they are fully immersed, and the quality of the work is a reflection of that unity. But modern technology, dualistically conceived, separated into objective parts and subjective users, fundamentally lacks this. The creator, the owner, and the user feel no particular sense of identity with it. They don't see themselves in the object. It's just a thing separate and apart.
Ah, I see. So this lack of identity, this absence of genuine quality in the production and consumption process, it manifests as an overall dullness of appearance in modern products.
Yeah.
And to compensate, this dullness is often overlaid with a veneer of style. Think of stylized cars, stylized refrigerators, stylized toys for stylized children. These are superficial attempts to mask the underlying lack of connection. To anyone sensitive to romantic quality, he argues, this just makes it all the worse. It's not just depressingly dull, it's also phony. It's a superficial solution to a deep, systemic problem of disengagement.
Exactly. So the crisis of technological ugliness, therefore, cannot be solved by rationality alone, because rationality itself is the source of the problem when it is conceived dualistically, separating subject from object. But abandoning rationality altogether, like John and Sylvia attempt to do, isn't the answer either. That simply leads to a rejection of the material world and its immense benefits. It's a trap to think you can simply choose one over the other.
So what's the path forward then?
The true solution, he argues, is not that you abandon rationality, but that you expand the nature of rationality. He draws that powerful analogy to Isaac Newton inventing calculus to handle instantaneous rates of change, a new form of reason that was previously considered unreasonable or even incomprehensible, but was necessary to understand the dynamic world. A similar, profound expansion of reason is needed to address technological ugliness, but it must occur at the roots, not at the branches, meaning it requires a fundamental shift in our understanding of what reason is, not just superficial adjustments to current systems. It calls for a deeper paradigm shift, a kind of Copernican inversion of thought itself.
Which really calls for us to consider how such a new form of reason that integrates quality might impact our most pressing societal challenges,
Sure.
right? From environmental issues to social divisions, which so often stem from these very classical romantic splits. It's not just about fixing things, but about fundamentally changing how we relate to them and to each other.
The final climb, Phaedrus, Chris, and the path forward.
As the physical journey progresses, the challenging climb up the mountain with Chris parallels deeper internal struggles within the narrator himself. Chris exhibits increasing defiance and anger when exhausted, often resorting to that plaintive phrase, "my stomach hurts," as a way to avoid acknowledging weakness, or maybe just to escape the arduous task. The narrator, recognizing patterns from his own past and Phaedrus, relates a crucial insight. When you try to climb a mountain to prove how big you are, you almost never make it. And even if you do, it's a hollow victory. Any effort that has self-glorification as its final endpoint is bound to end in disaster, because it lacks the humility and submission to quality.
And this is vividly illustrated by Phaedrus's earlier failed pilgrimage to the holy Mount Kailas in the Himalayas. He had immense physical and intellectual strength, but wasn't ready for it because he saw himself as the fixed entity, not the pilgrimage or the mountain. He was trying to conquer the mountain, to use it for his own purposes, his own intellectual validation. The other pilgrims, however, succeeded because they sensed the holiness of the mountain, approaching it as an act of devotion, an act of submission. Their surrender to the sacred, their humility, infused their spirits, enabling them to endure what Phaedrus, with his purely individual strength and ego, could not. And the narrator's own anxieties about his relationship with Chris are shown through those disturbing bad dreams about a glass door, with Chris on the other side feeling deep fear and a sense of being trapped and unable to connect. He feels a growing despair, a sense of a mind divided against itself, where he, the current self, is the evil figure in the shadows, the one responsible for the split.
Yeah, it's really intense. The narrative builds to a painful, emotionally charged confrontation with Chris about his recurring stomach hurts and general unhappiness. The narrator, in a moment of desperate honesty and vulnerability, finally tells Chris that people are saying all these troubles are in your mind and that he, the narrator, was the only one holding them all back.
Mm-hmm.
This painful truth reveals the depth of Chris's psychological burden, the weight of his own unexpressed sadness, and the narrator's protective yet ultimately damaging role in maintaining that emotional distance. It's a gut-wrenching moment of reckoning for their relationship.
It really is. And in a moment of raw, devastating truth, the narrator identifies the mysterious, uncomprehending, yet profoundly aware gaze in Chris's eyes with that of a wounded duck he killed as a boy, a look of innocent suffering. The realization is shattering. I'm not giving him strength. I never have been. I'm killing him. He sees how his own mental struggles, his avoidance of Phaedrus and his past, have negatively impacted Chris, mirroring the very dualism he's been fighting against. He realizes that his attempt to separate himself from Phaedrus has wounded his son.
And this is the absolute climax of Phaedrus' return.
Yeah.
As the narrator realizes with a jolt, the dreamer isn't me at all, it's Phaedrus. He's waking up. The mind divided against itself is now him, the current narrator, as the loathsome one, the part that tried to suppress Phaedrus, the part that caused the pain and distance. The ghost he pursued, rationality in its extreme form, is now confronting him directly, forcing an assimilation, a reunification of his fragmented self. It's an agonizing but necessary integration.
So what happens after that intensity? How do they move forward?
Well, in the immediate aftermath of this profound, emotionally charged realization, there's a desperate need to return to reality, away from the disturbing dreams and emotional turmoil. The motorcycle, which started as a means of escape from his past, now becomes a symbol of continuity and enduring quality, a tangible link to the present, and a vehicle for the integration of his fractured self. The easy freeway miles after the intensity of the mountains feel like a return to normalcy. The engine drones on in its continuing oblivion to everything but its own internal forces, a steady, reliable presence in a world of inner chaos.
Okay, so a kind of grounding force. And the reconciliation.
The ultimate reconciliation comes when the narrator realizes the Chris he missed so badly, the innocent boy, was not an object but a pattern. The poignant idea that Chris is now a little girl named Nell in his dreams implies a reincarnation or continuation of a pattern of connection and love, not a physical entity. It's a symbolic reframing of loss and continuity. The narrator explicitly states, the hole in the pattern is being mended, transcending physical loss and offering a different, more enduring perspective on continuity and relationship, a healing of the dualistic split within himself and with his son. It suggests that even fragmented things can be made whole through understanding and acceptance.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. And this powerful concept, this ability to mend patterns and find continuity, it extends to the idea of a culture-bearing book like Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance itself, doesn't it? It's not just part of the culture, it bears the culture on its back, as the narrator puts it, offering another, more serious alternative to material success. It's not so much an alternative as an expansion of the meaning of success to something larger than just getting a good job and staying out of trouble. It gives a positive, unconfining goal, one rooted in a deeper sense of purpose and meaning.
Exactly. Ultimately, the solution to the bad quality, the chaotic, disconnected spirit of the 20th century, and perhaps our own century too, is this expansion of reason, to assimilate previously irrational elements, to unify the classical and romantic understanding. It comes down to individuals making quality decisions, and that's all. It's a profound return to individual integrity, self-reliance, and old-fashioned gumption, recognizing that the future depends on individual engagement with quality in every aspect of our lives, from fixing an engine to understanding ourselves. It's a call to conscious, integrated living. Outro.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed through the American landscape and the vast, intricate landscapes of the mind, from the seemingly simple act of motorcycle maintenance to these really profound philosophical insights about the nature of reality and that elusive yet central concept of quality. We've seen how the persistent divide between classical and romantic understanding, between reason and feeling, creates friction not just in our personal lives, but in society at large, leading to frustration, disengagement, and maybe that sense of ugliness in the world around us.
Yeah, and our deep dive suggests that quality is not just an aesthetic preference or some measurable attribute. It's a fundamental, undefinable reality that unites mind and matter, subject and object. It's the very driving force behind true craftsmanship, genuine understanding, and ultimately a fulfilling life. When we align our actions with this inner sense of quality, whether it's meticulously fixing an engine, creating a piece of art, engaging in a difficult conversation, or simply being present on the road, we cultivate gumption and find that peace of mind. It's a pathway to wholeness, a way to mend the perceived splits in our experience.
So what does this all mean for you as you navigate your own complex world? Consider the ghosts you might be unknowingly pursuing in your own life, those hidden assumptions or dualistic ways of thinking that shape your perceptions, perhaps insulating you from a deeper, more unified reality.
And this raises an important question, doesn't it? In what areas of your life are you encountering stuckness or ugliness? Whether in a challenging task, a relationship, or maybe a broader societal problem. Could reframing your relationship with these challenges by cultivating peace of mind and looking for the inherent quality that defines everything lead to your own Copernican inversion, a fundamental shift in perspective that brings a deeper, more harmonious understanding of the world around you?
Something to think about. The journey isn't over. It's always going somewhere, on a track called quality. Until next time, keep diving deep.